Struggling to answer Bible contradictions in light of atheists' comments about the Bible? This video is for you. Those of you who are repeat viewers to the channel will of course know that one of the biggest, if not the biggest, proponents that there are alleged contradictions in the Bible is Steve Wells of the Skeptic's Annotated Bible. But as I've contested in dozens of other videos, which you can see in my playlist, which I'll link at the end of this video, most of them are thinner than tissue paper. And here is a bit more of an in-depth example as to the method that he uses, Steve Wells that is, and why it's false and deeply fallacious. Steve Wells tries to make the Bible seem contradictory on who Peter denied Jesus to, in the famous story about how Peter denied knowing Jesus 3 times the night before his crucifixion. Now, Steve Wells claims that the 4 different Gospels have 4 different answers in his bold headlines, but if he actually reads the passages that he quotes, he would see that it's far from the case. He states in Matthew's Gospel it was a servant girl, another servant girl, and then a crowd of people. He claims that Mark's Gospel says it's a servant girl, the same servant girl, not a different one, and then a crowd of people. Luke's Gospel is a servant girl, then a man, and then another man. In John's Gospel, he states it was a girl at the door, several anonymous persons, and then one of the high priest's servants. In chapter 26, verse 69, it says, "Now Peter was sitting out in the courtyard, and a servant girl came to him and said, 'You were with Jesus of Galilee,' she said. But he denied it before them all. 'I don't know what you're talking about,' he said." Keep that in mind. First, we already established that Peter is among a crowd of people, rather than just one person. And there's another sort of unspoken assumption that Steve Wells tries to assume and insert into the Bible, which is that Peter was only accused 3 times, rather than him denying it 3 times. But in crowds of people against one person, that's not typically how things work. The thing is that usually when somebody is initially accused of something, it goes something like this. It's a huge crowd of people. One guy says, "Hey, look, you're with Jesus." Another guy, before the person even gets a chance to respond, says, yeah, I see him too. And then another one might even say, and then maybe dozens at a time start saying it before the person who's probably caught off guard says, whoa, wait a minute. That's not true. Anyway, after this, in Matthew's Gospel, it says, "Then he," Peter, "went out to the gateway where another servant girl saw him and said to the people there, 'This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth,' and he denied it again." Again, notice how it establishes that there's still a crowd. After a little while, those standing in there went up to Peter and said, "Surely you are one of them. Your accent gives you away." Then he began to call down curses, and he swore to them, "I don't know the man." So in each and every individual instance, we already have it established that there's a crowd around. So it's not just one individual, and saying that it's a contradiction is a bit of a stretch. Anyway, Mark's Gospel isn't really worth going over in depth. The only difference really is it says, "And he went out into the entryway," and it says, instead of a different servant girl, it just says, "When the servant girl saw him there, she said again to those standing around, 'This fellow is one of them.'" Well, again, there's no reason why only one of the servants has to be there. There really is no contradiction at all. Once again, though, in the other Gospels, Luke and John, it merely says a man came up to him and said this, which, as I've said again, given that Peter is in front of a crowd of people, it's not too different or difficult to say that there were definitely men there. I mean, John does, again, add a bit of detail as to who the specific man may be, but saying a man did this and then adding more detail about who they are is not mutually exclusive in the slightest. That's not a contradiction. A contradiction is two things that can't go together, not one adding details that the other doesn't. So as you can see, a lot of these contradictions in the Bible are nothing to worry about. They really are thinner than tissue paper, and Christians should not be concerned with that. Subscribe for more quick answers like this.